everybody, and welcome back to my channel. If you guys are new here, my name is Dana, and today I am finally sitting down and talking about my full fertility story, trying to conceive with endometriosis, and basically everything that has happened from that time up until now, post my 2 unsuccessful egg transfers. I had so many of you reach out to me on Instagram after I, shared bits and pieces of my fertility story, saying that you were going through the same thing. I've also gotten messages from women and young girls who are dealing with a possible endometriosis diagnosis, and they are afraid to try and conceive and what that means for them. So I'm gonna go a little bit into the background of my diagnosis, and then again, like I said, my full fertility journey. I hate that word, story. I will do my best to timestamp this, and I did make an outline, so hopefully everything is easily transferred from that paper out of my mouth. I'm gonna do my best. Before we get started, I'd love it if you guys joined the family and subscribed. You can also go ahead and follow me on Instagram at Dana Gagliotti. Like I said, I was sharing a lot more on my Instagram, so if you want to go back and read through those posts or watch that little video that I posted on there, I will be sure to link my Instagram below for you guys. So let's start back in 2016. I was about, how long ago is that now? What's the year, 2021? So about almost 6 years ago, I noticed this really terrible pain in my pelvic region. I went in and got a ultrasound, and it turns out I had a grapefruit size cyst on my left ovary. My doctor did share with me that he suspected that this cyst was caused by endometriosis, but again, we had to go in and remove it anyway. And while they were doing the cystectomy, they could then check to see if I did in fact have endometriosis. Now, if you don't know what endometriosis is, I'm sure a lot of you do. It is an idiopathic disease that essentially causes retrograde menstruation, meaning that your uterine lining can end up anywhere outside of your uterus, and it creates these lesions that then become painful every month while you're menstruating. That is just like a very simplified version of endometriosis, but that is what they suspected I had. So late March 2016, I finally went in for my cystectomy and diagnostic lab, and it was confirmed that it was a chocolate cyst on my left ovary. I think it was like 30 times the size of my ovary. I don't know, it was like the size of a grapefruit. They removed it, and they had told me that they were initially worried that they wouldn't be able to salvage my left ovary. I mean, obviously it was only like 22 at the time. It was a concern that if I did want to have children, that it could be more difficult if I only had one functioning ovary. I was suffering from other symptoms that I then realized was due to endometriosis. If you guys want a video like more in depth on that, I can do that, but I don't want to go too deep in here because I do have a lot of other stuff to talk about. In that time, post my laparoscopic surgery, my pain was a lot better. Obviously the cyst was gone, but they had also gotten rid of the endometriosis that was outside of my uterus, which again causes that pain when you menstruate every month. I was basically symptom-free for like 2 years post my diagnostic lap, and at that point, my husband and I were not really sure that we wanted kids. I mean, we were pretty adamant about not wanting kids for a while, but I was young and whatever. My doctors had told me and asked me if I wanted to go on birth control, even immediately post-surgery, and I said, no, let me see how my body reacts with just having this surgery done, and I can always go on something if I need it. Well, fast forward 2 years later, the pain was getting really intense again. I was getting lots of other weird symptoms, so I decided to go back on birth control. Now, some doctors will also say that going on birth control right before you are planning to conceive is actually a good idea. I think the exact reason has something to do with the fact that your body, it slows down the cyst creation in your body and just overall lessens any lesions or anything that could happen from endometriosis, which then would cause a mechanical issue with pregnancy. And I'll get into that later. But like I said, at the time I was not interested in having kids. So 2 years later, it was actually a really big deal for me to finally break down and go on birth control, because I really didn't want to, but at that point the pain was pretty unbearable, so I needed to do something. I stayed on birth control for about a year or two, and eventually I did get off because Vinny and I decided that we wanted to start to try having kids. And I've heard of stories of women getting pregnant right away, but I've also heard of stories that your body needs like a full year to adjust off of birth control. So I was just trying to plan a little bit ahead. So now enter my husband and I going to a fertility IVF specialist. We did try naturally for about 6-7 months, but I've always known that it was going to be difficult for me to get pregnant, mainly because of the endometriosis, and also just from like past data points. Vinny and I have been together for quite a while, and of those 10 years that we've been together, I've only been on birth control 2 of those years. I've never had a pregnancy scare, nothing. Now, when we went down and spoke to the doctor that we decided to go with, I don't know if we're gonna stay with him. Anyway, he had basically told us that we could try IUI, but since you have endometriosis, I think it's going to be a waste of your time, and let's start with IVF right out of the gate. Now, the reason he suggested this is because endometriosis can, like I said, affect fertility for a slew of different reasons, but mainly I would say the issue that majority of the women have when it comes to endometriosis and trying to conceive is a mechanical issue. There can be like a tubal issue or issues with lesions on the uterine lining. So at the time, the doctor had told us, let's do IVF because it will bypass all of these mechanical issues. We did a test transfer to make sure that all of my tubes were open, because with IUI, they essentially just like put the sperm inside of you and hope that it meets up with your egg and then implants, where IVF is a lot more involved, and you're doing egg retrievals and embryo transfers, where IUI is kind of taking a back seat a little bit and trying to let things kind of occur a little bit more naturally. But like I said, my doctor did not think that was going to be good, and when you look at the statistics for that, it doesn't sound promising. I think it's like 13% chance of it working. So in my mind, I wasn't even interested in that option anyway. If we were going to do something, I wanted the most chance of us having success. Now, there is another little sneaky issue when it comes to endometriosis, and that can be an immunological response. So your body essentially, and it's very confusing, I barely understand it myself, but after 2 unsuccessful rounds, I did a shit ton of research in like medical journals, things that I couldn't even understand. I had to ask Vinny so many times, I'm like, what does this mean? But essentially what happens is the embryo is viewed as like an outsider attack. My body doesn't like it and it destroys it. So those are the 2 main issues that I found with how fertility is affected by endometriosis. Now finally, let's go into slightly more specifics of my actual IVF story. So like I said, my doctor wanted to directly go to IVF, and my husband and I were both down for this. The first step after the transfer, the trial transfer, was to then start taking injections to stimulate my follicles and egg production. I thought that was going to be the worst of it. I'm not really afraid of needles. I gave myself most of the shots because Vinny actually wasn't even here. I mean, I felt weird. Like, and I spoke about this on Instagram, I just felt like it was kind of like an out-of-body experience. I didn't really recognize my own emotions. Everything felt very tender. I was bloated. It was just, you know, it's what it was. I don't even remember how long it was for, honestly, maybe like 2 weeks. And analogous with that, I was going into the doctor every other day for blood work and an ultrasound to check on my follicles to see how they were growing, how many eggs, all that good stuff. Now, the whole time that they're monitoring my eggs, it's very clear that my left ovary production was much slower. So when all was said and done, after we did our egg retrieval, I came out with 10 eggs. I believe 8 of them came from my right ovary, while only 2 were from the left. No big deal, 10 eggs, that's great. Now we did opt to do pre-genetic testing, which is PGTA. I think it's like pre-genetic testing aneuploidy. I don't even know what that means. It's some embryological word or whatever. So we had the 10 eggs, and then from there, they are monitored for 5 to 6 days max by the in-house embryologist. And we would get updates through our portal every day on how the embryos were looking. But basically, if they don't reach a certain maturity by day 6, they are not viable. And then from that 10, we had 7 that matured into the stage that they were supposed to, like, you know, by the end of day 6. At that point, then our embryos are sent for pre-genetic testing. And every step of the way, you know that you're just going to be losing eggs, and it sucks, but you know, it's kind of how it goes. So it's like, okay, well, we have this many didn't end up getting fertilized, so now those are out, and then you go to pre-genetic testing and you're like, okay, a bunch of those aren't good, those are out. And then essentially, after everything was said and done, we were left with 3 normal female embryos. Now, because we decided to do the pre-genetic testing, and the reason that we opted to do that was because a lot of miscarriages that occur are with embryos that already are not viable to begin with. So we wanted to make sure that we were using the best quality egg and just having all of our variables, or at least try to diminish as many variables as possible. So that is why we opted to do it. So because of that, we did have to have our eggs frozen. They do make you pay a fee for holding on to your eggs. The whole thing is a lot of money. We are very lucky that our insurance does pay for some of this, but a lot of costs do also come out of pocket. So I don't think that's a secret that this whole process is really pricey, but that was just another fee to be added on. So anyway, our 3 embryos are now frozen, and we are ready to start the transfer process. For the transfer process, I am put on a new set of medications. I was on a few different types of hormones, along with a steroid and an antibiotic. So basically with IVF, they do follow your own natural cycle as well. So I was waiting to be ovulating. And as I'm approaching my ovulation date, again, I'm in and out of the office every other day, checking on my uterine lining to make sure that it is thick enough. I was also on other supplements too, to help with this. And they're just monitoring my blood hormone levels, and just making sure that my body is a good incubator for said embryo. These medications before the transfer, I turned into a human monster. I did not recognize myself, and when I know I said that about the injection portion, but this to me was way more intense. There would be days where like I just couldn't stop crying, yelling. Vin was scared to come home from work some days, like, and that is not. It was funny. He was like, if I hadn't known you for like 10 years, I would be like, what the hell? Because this was so unlike, it was just out of character for me. It's just unlike anything that he'd ever seen before. He's like, what the shit? Yeah, so I was just a fucking maniac. So we scheduled our first transfer, and then embryologist thaws out the egg. They put a catheter in vaginally to then put the little embryo, and it makes its way up where it's gotta go. After the embryo transfer, I think like 3 days, they recommended like no exercise, take it very easy, and then from there were some like other like random rules. Now I was so nervous, and this is the point I think that a lot of people call the 2-week wait, and that's from the time of your transfer until you can go back for your beta pregnancy test. Torture, just straight torture. They say not to take home pregnancy tests, but you can bet that I did. My 2-week wait was actually more like 10 days, and I think it was around day 6 or 7 I had started using at-home tests, and they were all coming up negative. I did some research then to see how much HCG had to be in your blood I mean not blood, in your urine for it to be detected by a home pregnancy test. So I got the test that you needed the lowest threshold to be detected, and still nothing. So I was feeling very down about the whole thing, but you know, I was like, all right, we're not gonna have an answer until the 10 days are up anyway. So I go back in, it's a Monday, I'm very excited, and I get my blood taken, and I know that they're gonna call me by like noon that day with the results. Still don't have an answer though, because they call me and tell me that I have very, very low levels of HCG. I think like 0.5 above the minimum threshold of a pregnancy. So he said it could either be two things. It could be that you had a chemical pregnancy, which is why your blood work does have a little bit of HCG in it, or it could be that we just have a later implantation. I then had to wait till Wednesday. Early pregnancy, your HCG should be doubling daily. So their thought was by Wednesday, if I am in fact pregnant, my numbers will have shot up. So I go back Wednesday, get another blood test, and we get the news that it was in fact a chemical pregnancy. Now, a chemical pregnancy is basically just a very, very, very early miscarriage. You wouldn't even know that you were pregnant. I actually did throw up though, which is very odd. I did have some symptoms, but I couldn't have been pregnant for more than a week. So I don't know if my body's just super sensitive or what. I did notice that I had gotten a fever after my transfer. It was very, very low grade. That was like the first sign. I was like, I don't know if that's like a normal reaction. We came up with another game plan. We decided we were going to try again immediately the next month. And if that didn't work, we would fully reassess, because then at that point we would still have one egg or one embryo left. Go in for the transfer. Again, I was feeling really good because I actually went in for the transfer, I think it was either our wedding anniversary or like the day after. So I was like, oh, this is meant to be. This is great. I'm in the waiting room, waiting for them to call me in for the transfer. You sign all these forms and waivers and legal crap, and I get pulled back into the room, and right as I am about to have my second embryo transferred into me, they tell me, hey, by the way, we lost your third embryo. Now, this is something that can happen. This can happen through assisted hatching. This can happen when your embryos are frozen. They basically had to thaw out both of my embryos for some reason to get the embryo that they were going to be using to transfer that day. So that really threw me. First of all, I'm here, so I'm having trouble getting pregnant. And then right as my legs are mid-air, and you're about to put an embryo inside of me, you then tell me that this is the last one, last chance. Done. That was really fun. I tried my best not to stress about it. I was like, my body does not need this stress. Let me just try to stay as calm as possible. This is going to work. It's going to work. Plot twist, it did not work. And now at this point, I am just devastated because we don't have any more eggs left. We don't have any more embryos left. So now we are in early November at this point, and Minnie and I had decided that we're going to take a step back. My body needs a little bit of rest from those medications and just everything. And like I said, I mentioned this previously, I don't remember where, but I just felt like I was fixated on that, and that became everything, and it was all I could think about. I don't want that for myself. It was very emotionally taxing, and so I just felt like it was best to step back for a little bit. Our next steps are possibly finding a new doctor to work with, taking time off to readjust my body, and really trying to look more into the immunological responses, because even after the second transfer, I did have a fever again. I just know from like my body personally, it is very reactive. I always get like rashes and hives. So I feel like there's something else going on there. That's also a good note to leave you guys on, is if you feel like something is not right, advocate for yourself, for your health, see multiple doctors. Don't just take what one says. Like, really take your health into your own hands. And I know that it sucks that like you have to do that, because you're kind of, in one way, it's like, well, I'm going to all these people who are supposed to be experts, and whatever, why am I the one who has to go on and read these medical journals that I don't understand to come back to you and say, hey, is there any immunological responses with endometriosis that happens? Because I think that's happening to me. And then the doctor was like, oh yeah, we can try to put you on something else after. I'm like, well, why wasn't that addressed in the beginning? So that's just kind of, I'm a little mad at this doctor right now. And on top of the last egg being gone or embryo being gone. Good news, I am feeling so much better now that my head is clear again. The fog has been lifted. The obsession has dropped. I mean, I was talking a bit about this, and it's like at a certain point, like I started, obviously when we started this, we were so excited and it was fun. And now I've reached the point where it's not exciting and or fun anymore. It's mostly about winning, and I don't want that to be like, I'm like, yes, my body, it will get pregnant, it must get pregnant, I'm going to win, I'm going to crack this. It just wasn't a healthy mindset to have surrounding the whole situation. So that was at my point where I'm like, okay, let me reassess, let's go into this smarter. I don't want to just keep pushing through, stupidly exhausting myself. Let's readjust, reassess, and go in with a better game plan. So that is essentially what we are doing right now. Like I said, I did cease all medications back in the beginning of November. I'm just kind of like now starting to feel more normal in the past like week or so. So it's definitely taken a little bit of time. And it's also just emotionally taxing too, in the way, you know, where it's disappointing. It's a disappointment to Vinny and I that this has not worked again, but we're super hopeful that it will eventually when we are ready to pick it back up. So if you've clicked on this video and you're like, oh, I want to hear an endometriosis success story, I don't have that ending yet, but I'm confident that we will. I just wanted to share my story and put this information out there because I've gotten so many messages and just saying that you feel less alone, knowing that somebody else is going through this. And that was really the biggest thing for me. It's just you feel so alone. So my goal is to help ease any of that if possible. I have so much more empathy for people going through the situation. If I'm being honest, I didn't get it before. I didn't get how devastating it would be to like, one, watch people get pregnant so easily, and two, just be met with issues at every turn and it's still not work out. But you know, I mean, there's so many things that I could say like, woe is me, but I will not, because it really just isn't how I feel at this point. When I was in the depths of despair with all of those hormones running through my body, I really thought that it was just like a deep depression. Like I thought I was never going to feel normal again. So I just want to tell you guys, if you are in the middle of that right now, it will get better. It is your body playing tricks on you. That being said, I know this video is going to be very long, so let me wrap it up here. If you guys have any other questions, anything that I didn't touch on, I tried to do kind of like an abridged version because it is very long. There's a lot of like stupid medical jargon thrown in there that no one cares or knows what it means. If you have any more questions, please leave them down below. And like I mentioned earlier, if you guys would be interested in a fuller in-depth video about my endometriosis diagnosis and all that stuff, let me know as well. It really does feel so much better to get this off my chest, so I am feeling good. I'm sending all of you so much love. Thank you so much for watching. Have an amazing rest of your day, a wonderful rest of your week.